Please be seated.
People versus Theresa Brennan, 19-25735, Dr. H.
Appearances, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. William Rolson with the F people. Dan Graham for the people.
Good afternoon, Rick Cobb and Larry Willie with Theresa Brennan.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, let me first start with the pre-sentence report that the court reviewed. And let me just indicate for the record that I have reviewed the letters that have been submitted on behalf of the defendant, Ms. Brennan, and I'm prepared for sentencing. Any additions, corrections, or deletions, Mr. Willie or Ms. Cobb, with regards to the pre-sentence investigation report.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
On behalf of the Attorney General's office.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Both parties have received both the Attorney General's memo as well as the memo from Ms. Brennan with regards to the guidelines in this case, and both parties agree that the guidelines are 0 to 6 months. Is that correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Anything on behalf of the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Your Honor, I know you've read the materials. In our written materials, what we've outlined are the bases that we rely on as reasons for following the recommendation of the probation department. Ms. Brennan be sentenced to a term of probation that does not include a term of jail. These bases generally are Ms. Brennan's remorse, acceptance of responsibility, the significant consequences she has already had as a result of her conduct, and her history of service to Livingston County. Ordinarily, if I were standing in this position with a 63-year-old first-time nonviolent offender and 0 to 6 months guidelines, I would be thinking that straight probation would be the normal outcome. We recognize this is not an ordinary case, however, because of Ms. Brennan's position as judge at the time of the offenses. But as we've detailed in our materials, and actually as the people have detailed in their materials, Ms. Brennan has had the privilege of being a judge stripped of her in a very public, very humiliating set of hearings. She was removed from the bench, and she will never be a judge again. The same is going to be true for her law license. That is currently under an automatic interim suspension as a result of the plea, just awaiting today's judgment. So, Your Honor, we ask you to consider those significant consequences. The loss of her ability to be a judge and a lawyer has been a devastating one for her. And when you add that to the fact that she's now going to be a convicted felon and potentially subject to felony probation with that type of a big hammer, we believe that the sentencing goals of deterrence and punishment are met with an additional probationary sentence without any jail. Now, Your Honor, there has been a lot of media attention to Ms. Brennan and her legal troubles over the last several years. One of the things that has not gotten any attention and that we have highlighted in our written materials, but I just wanted to speak on it a bit, is Ms. Brennan's history of service to Livingston County, not just as a judge, but also just as a citizen, and also the very positive impact she has had on the lives of many, many people. We've submitted a number of letters to you, Your Honor. I'm sure you've read them. We had a very big stack of them, and they were rolling in even today. There are simply a lot of people that support her, and I'm sure this courtroom has any number of people that would be willing to say nice things about her. We submit this information to you, Your Honor, not to minimize what she has done, but just to point out that we're all the same. We all have good things that we've done, and we all have bad things that we've done. And for Ms. Brennan, the bad, of course, is this case and the circumstances that have surrounded it for the last couple of years. But the rest of it is pretty darn good. She's 63 years old. She's never been in any trouble. She's a productive person. She's a hard worker. She has a generous heart. She gives her time and talents to other people. She's loved by her family and friends, needed by her family and friends, and actively giving in her community. And finally, Your Honor, I just wanted to point out that there really has been a lot of change for the good in Ms. Brennan over the last 3 years. What started as emotionally driven, really bad decision-making by her at the beginning of her divorce really spun out, and she has faced challenge after challenge after challenge over the last 3 years, culminating, of course, with us being here today for a felony sentencing. This has all been very public. She's received a lot of loud and harsh criticism, but as we would hope to see from someone who truly accepts responsibility for what they did and who truly is remorseful. None of this has resulted in her being angry or resentful or deflecting blame. It's been quite the opposite. It's resulted in her being humbled. It's resulted in her having a lot of positive personal growth and just a overall improvement in her outlook and perspective. Now, this, of course, was not easy, and it did not happen overnight, and it was a process. And I think she probably will talk to you more about it, Your Honor, but I'm sure you've read her statement in the pre-sentence report. This was very difficult, and she went through some really dark times, but she did the work, and she continues to do the work because she wants to come out on the other side of this thing a better person. Because upon reflection, she realizes that not only did her behavior, was it below what we expect of judges, it was below what she expects of herself. And that's all I have here.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Anything else on behalf of the defense?
Your Honor, I believe Ms. Brennan would like to address the court.
Okay, Ms. Brennan, you can address the court. Please stand behind the podium. Go ahead, Ms. Brennan.
Your Honor, I've struggled with how to convey to you my remorse and shame. That I feel because of what I've done. I know you read the letter that I wrote, and I wasn't going to read any part of it here today because I don't think I'd be able to make it through. But I think that it's important that the public know I have taken this so seriously. So I'm going to try to read a little bit of it. No good answer exists as to why I lied to Mr. Kaiser during my divorce deposition. It was ignorant, foolish, and wrong. I'm devastated. I lost my career, and I'm a felon. My husband and I, we didn't have children. As a result, we threw ourselves into our careers. For years, I defined myself for what I did, and I believed I was doing something that was purposeful. Because of my actions, I've lost that. Now, I appreciate that the public now has a more negative view of judges and lawyers because of what I did. That's not what I wanted. I wanted the opposite. My family and friends have suffered because of my actions. I hate that I went through this. I've been totally shamed, I'm humiliated, and I am embarrassed. I began journaling, and I'm going to read a portion of what I wrote this summer of 2019. I have never broken down in front of you. I've been stoic. I've been steadfast in my determination to show strength when around my family and friends and of course in public. My brother told me he wants to emulate my strength, something like that I'm a role model for his boys. My dad wrote me a letter and told me I was his hero, that he'd not had a hero since my mom died. I am none of those or that. I'm simply living my life the only way I know how. My suffering reached a point to where I wondered how to die. A gun, pills, hanging, drowning, driving into a tree, asphyxiation, but I'm not that weak. I have sobbed more in the past 3 years than my entire life. And I have buried a mother and a sister, curled up in a fetal position, lying on the floor because I could not hold up my weight. The type of sobbing that scares you because your mind and body ache beyond recognition, where you're gasping for air. I prayed for night and dreaded dawn. At night, I held a rosary as I fell asleep. When I would awake, I would pull the comforter over my head, creating a cocoon. Fall and winter were a welcome relief because darkness arrives sooner. I watched my father age. I've seen him weep uncontrollably. The shame I felt, the fear of going into a store, anywhere in public because of the stares, never knowing when I'd be confronted, the embarrassment of giving anyone my last name, and begged on my knees the universe to make it stop. I think I am to a place where the tears stop and they come again and again. I have believed I am unworthy of respect. I have believed I have lived a wasted life, that my entire life has been a failure. I have believed I am worthless. I have believed I will never be deserving of love. Do you not understand? I am broken. Then I am consumed with guilt. I have failed in so many ways. I failed so many people. I have let down and caused indescribable suffering for my family and friends. They have given me unconditional love and support, which I don't deserve. Over time, I hope to be able to repay them for what they have done for me. My actions have resulted in me letting down my community, those that elected me, those that I worked with. I've disgraced the legal professions. Someone I asked to write a letter for me said that he believes we should not be judged by our worst or our best. I pray that's true. This is my worst. I have learned invaluable lessons about myself over these past 3 years, lessons I promise it's going to allow me to make amends. Recently, I was attending a funeral, and there was this reading from Proverbs, and there was a phrase that struck me. It was, humility before honor. Somewhere along the line, I lost my ability to be humble. This has humbled me. I don't feel sorry for myself. I blame only myself. I know I have much to be grateful for. I ask for mercy.
Thank you, Ms. Brennan. Anything on behalf of the defense, anything else?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Anything on behalf of the people?
Did the court want to address the root issue?
Do you have any, Mr. Root, I think it's
Mr. Root-
pursuant to the Crime Victims' Rights Act, can speak. Go ahead.
I've spoken to his counsel, Mr. Kaiser. Mr. Root is not in the building. He did not come to court today. He hopes the court has read his correspondence. I believe the court has that, is that correct?
I have.
Okay. And I think
Appreciate
also,
his statement.
okay, very good. With that in mind, then, if I can allocute, Judge.
Okay.
Um,
And the reason, just so the record, pursuant to the Crime Victims' Rights Act, I did believe that met the standard based on what was represented in the court at the time of the plea, but we can move forward. Thank you.
And I did inquire of Mr. Kaiser if he felt that his client was incapacitated, you know, and he indicated he did not think he was.
Okay.
He was able to converse and whatnot. With that in mind, Judge, I know you've received our sentencing memorandum. And a couple of points here. I agree with Ms. Cobb that this isn't the average case, and all we have to do is look around the courtroom to see the public interest in it, and we understand that it's not the average case. And you know, I sincerely and genuinely agree with Ms. Brennan's observations that no, I don't think we are judged or should be judged by our worst days, nor by our best days. I think usually the truth of the matter falls somewhere in between. And I embrace that position, and I agree with it. Now, with that in mind, I think the thing that is worth spending a little bit of time on in this case are really two facts. One, which is obvious, at the time that she committed the offense of perjury, she was a sitting state district court judge. And we obviously expect more from our judiciary or members of the judiciary than perjury during anything, whether it be a deposition during a divorce matter or open court. And the position of trust that she held is relevant for the court's consideration. And the reason that I say that is because of the knowledge of the wrongfulness of the conduct is present at the time that it's committed. It can't be said that the individual later realized, well, my gosh, I didn't realize that the falsehood that I told was, while I was under oath, and that it was a crime. I mean, clearly, given her position, Ms. Brennan was aware of the importance of the oath and following the oath. And, I'm sorry that she went through what she has just outlined for the court during the last 3 years. But to be quite frank, this is, and I think she probably understands this, is conduct that she brought upon herself in regards to the criminal charges that she faces. And nobody made her perjure herself. Now, with that in mind, the first point being her position, I turn to a second point, and, doing what we do, day in and day out, whether you might be a neurosurgeon or an engineer that builds highways or buildings, or a lawyer, you become accustomed to your environment after a while. And the men and women who do honest physical labor, even though it would be challenging to maybe others to do it day in and day out, after a while they become steeled to it, and they're able to accomplish it. And one of the things that I think is worth noting in this particular case is this thing that we do that we call the practice of law. Whether you're an advocate, whether you're a member of the bench, it is never to be taken for granted, the right to practice it, and B, the import or the requirement, the cornerstone in every county courthouse across our state, should have the word truth impressed upon it. And then the point that I get to is, we come in these rooms, we come in these courtrooms every day, we litigate, we advocate, we practice our craft. But the cornerstone of what we do is truth. it is not falsicity. And it is falsicity, it is, that is the darkness that really can take justice and set it on a different path than where it should be going. The tolerance of perjury can never be allowed. Now, at the same time, I invite the court, obviously, to think of the good deeds that Ms. Brennan may have done over the past. But at the end of the day, why we're here is while she was a member of the bar and while she was a member of the judiciary, she made a decision. And that decision was to perjure herself during her deposition and through her litigation involving Mr. Root. And that is, I understand her points and also Ms. Cobb's points that are very well made about the things that she's lost and the price that she has paid. And those are relevant considerations. I can't hide from that. But that being the case, the notion that it was a mistake or something inconsequential merit, I think is misplaced. The perjurous act that she made, Judge, as a member of the bench, I think I'm going to offer the court my opinion, and I think the court should sentence her to the top end of the guidelines. I think a 6-month jail sentence is appropriate in this case. With that in mind, Judge, I'm grateful for the court's time, and I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Ralston. Anything else from either side before the court imposes sentence?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Well, first of all, let me first commend the attorneys in this case, because I think that the attorneys for Ms. Brennan, Mr. Willie, and Ms. Cobb, and the attorneys for the people of the state of Michigan, the Attorney General's office, Mr. Ralston and Mr. Grano have shown an enormous amount of professionalism for the past 6 months. So I appreciate that from both sides. Let me first also indicate to Ms. Brennan that you may file an appeal of conviction for leave. You may file an application for leave to appeal your conviction and sentence. If you cannot afford to hire an attorney, the court will appoint an attorney and furnish the attorney with the transcripts and file necessary for you to handle your appeal, and your request for an attorney must be made within 42 days. Now, with regards to some aspects of the sentence, I will indicate that you must perform 200 hours of community service. You must obey all court orders. You must not engage in any assaultive, abusive, threatening, or intimidating behavior. You must not have verbal, written, electronic, or physical contact without permission of the field agent with anyone you know that have a felony record. You must not have verbal, written, electronic, or physical contact with anyone you know to be engaged in behavior that constitutes a violation of any criminal law of any unit of government. You must not use any object as a weapon. You must not own, use, or have under your control or area of control a weapon of any type or any imitation of a weapon. You must not be in the company of anyone you know to possess these items. You must comply with written and verbal orders made by the field agent. You must allow the field agent into your residence at any time during probationary supervision. You must submit to a search of your person and property, including but not limited to your vehicle, residence, and computer without the need of a warrant if the field agent has reasonable cause to believe you have items which violate the conditions for your probation. You must report any arrest, police contact, and property, loss of employment or change of residence within 24 hours, weekends and holidays accepted. You must comply with DNA testing and pay a $60 fee. State costs in the amount of $68. Crime victims assessment in the amount of $130. Court costs in the amount of $550. You are prohibited from the use of any controlled substance with regards to any issues of controlled substances. You may be detained for up to 72 hours without a warrant by a probation officer or any law enforcement officer if you have been alleged to have violated your probation. Now, the court has a decision to make, and the court is bound within the guidelines that were agreed upon by the parties of 0 to 6 months. And let me first indicate the first responsibility of any judge is to uphold the law. And our system of law is eroded, and there is a lack of trust in our judicial system if people who are tasked with upholding the law decide to subvert it for their own personal gain. Now, Ms. Brennan, you have taken several oaths in your life. You took an oath first when you became an attorney. This is the same oath that every attorney in the state of Michigan takes. And part of that oath was, and I will quote, "I will employ for the purpose of maintaining the causes confided to me such means only as are consistent with truth and honor. I will never seek to mislead the judge or jury by any artifice or false statement of fact or law." You also took took an oath when you became a judge, Ms. Brennan. You took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of Michigan, and the laws of the state of Michigan. And when you were a judge, you required, as all judges do, people who came before you to tell the truth. It doesn't matter if it was a family law case, or a civil case, or a criminal case. You required them to tell the truth. And the reason you, like all judges, required people that came before them to tell the truth is because the whole purpose of a criminal proceeding, or a civil proceeding, or a family law proceeding, any court proceeding, it really is a search for the truth. And when individuals come into court or go to a deposition and knowingly lie, that undermines that search for the truth. That is why we have perjury as a serious crime in Michigan, because our society simply does not accept actions in which people come into court and lie, or come to a deposition and lie. I don't doubt that you regret your actions, Ms. Brennan. I don't doubt that you were genuine with what you said. And I appreciate what you had to say. But there's also another oath that you took, and you took an oath during the deposition in your divorce case, another oath, and you swore to tell the truth in that deposition. And that's why we're in court today. Because on that day, you decided that you would lie to benefit yourself and to protect yourself. And even though you made others and required others to tell the truth, when it came your time to have to raise your hand to tell the truth, you decided that you weren't guilty. And so the request for probation, as far as this court is concerned, based on these actions, which are utterly unacceptable for a person who took an oath many times, or a couple of times, to uphold the law, required others to tell the truth. A probationary sentence under those circumstances would be wholly inadequate. These actions, it would be an understatement to say, are unacceptable. And that behavior is unacceptable. And a jail sentence in this case for those reasons would be more than appropriate as far as this court is concerned. And it will be the sentence of this court. The sentence, Mr. Brennan, within the guidelines that were agreed upon, to 6 months in the county jail, followed by 18 months of probation. Is there anything for either side?
No, Your Honor.
With regards to anything with regards to the jail sentence?
No, Your Honor, I guess our only request in that vein would be that she be allowed to be given a report date to make motions.
Mr. Ralston, is there any objection on behalf of the Attorney General's office if the court does agree to a report date? It would have to be a short period of time. What's the Attorney General's office's position on this?
Two thoughts that I have. Number one, clearly that's within the discretion of the court, it's allowable. What I'm thinking of is the sheriff may or may not have some logistical issues with housing Ms. Brennan, and given that obvious, quality of the case, I think it's probably appropriate to go ahead and, but I mean, I'm assuming the court is, we're talking about a number of days here, I mean, not weeks or months.
Well, there are unique issues to this case, and I believe a report date of Friday, January 24th would be more than appropriate. Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, everyone. There will be 0 days credit time served. This is only on 1 count of perjury. Thank you.
And Judge, at what time should the court, just so we're clear, what time would you want her to report?
At 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday, January 24th.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you, everyone.
All right. Welcome to your nightmare. Power to the people.
Marks like this, buddy.
Had they done that, there would have been more victims able to speak. And, they limited to this little.
How are you?
Is it Thursday?
About that. Today, yes, she will serve some tonight, but the reality of the situation is that it has absolutely nothing to do with the Ransky case, which a man is sitting behind bars for a long, long time.
That's the Attorney General exercising their discretion under Mr. Shooter. And I think, frankly, they didn't do their job to begin with. They had the evidence. We gave the evidence in 2017. I gave them the lead-up and the local prosecutor lead-up in 2013. And nobody wanted to do anything because they had their sweetheart arrangements with a powerful judge. She was powerful, as all judges are.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Drive carefully. First election because she assured me and others that she had what it took, and she was going to be courteous to people, respectful of people. And then in about 2009, people were calling me regularly, telling me how awful she was and how poorly she treated people, human beings that were there as litigants and lawyers as well. And then in 2013, just before the start of the Kowalski murder case, the news kept trickling to me from people that she was just too close to one of the detectives who had taken the deposition or the statement of Kowalski, and that she had a bias. So I raised that issue, and I suggested in two letters to the prosecuting attorney, look, you got to talk to people in your own office, and you need to talk to the detective and find out what the extent of that relationship was. They didn't do it. They sat still. The judge said, I'm not biased, I just am friends, and nothing out of the ordinary. And at that point, she was not recused, and she tried the case. Then the divorce started in 2017 or late 16. And we took her deposition. It was discovered at that time with phone records that we found that she and this detective had been talking to each other like 1,200 minutes worth of time in the year prior to the trial. Then witnesses testified that they had kissed in 2008, admitted kissing in the chambers of the court, that they had an extremely close relationship. She had gone skinny dipping with a bunch of women when two of the detectives involved in the case were at her home all prior to the trial, and she's making all kinds of rulings that affected the innocence or guilt of this human being.
So you kind of started uncovering some of these things, right?
It's still not done. We got a prosecutor who played dumb in 2013, played dumb again in 2017, and now we find out in a deposition in November of 2018, taken under an investigative subpoena with a grant of immunity to the cop, Furlong, that the Attorney General questioned him, and this guy said everybody in the prosecutor's office knew in 2013 of the close relationship we had, and that I had been to Brennan's cottage in Holland on numerous occasions every summer for a couple weeks. And this prosecutor just basically denied it. I filed a complaint with the Attorney General that they need to investigate him and his chief assistant and perhaps others in that office. And further that I demanded in a letter to him that he resign, and he chose not to.
Are you helping Mr. Kowalski with
I'm
his
doing
case?
nothing for Mr. Kowalski. I just want this man to have a fair trial, that's all.
Okay, so she's a
Matter of
Democrat,
fact, I've never
right?
met him. I've never
Okay.
met Mr. Kowalski.
Okay. So basically, this punishment was because of her being untruthful during the divorce proceedings about scrubbing the phone.
Right, and that's because the Attorney General chose not to take any action with regard to the misconduct and all this. Not our current Attorney
Furlong.
General, with regard to Furlong, and with regard to that trial itself. And there was evidence of that, of wrongdoing there.
Okay.
And that's their decision to make. I think they gave her. I think they gave her a little more protection than she was entitled to.
She's coming out.
Okay, go.
I may call you later.
You can anytime. You have my cell.
Yep.